In this video, I'm going to present to you how to improve processes within a few hours instead of weeks and without the need to get in extensive software or consultants. So whatever we do nowadays usually always ends up being a process, even though if it's something short or long, something we do physically or digitally, it always is a process in some sort of. So let's just look at some examples. So when we submit our taxes, there's a process behind it. We have to collect all the papers, submit it, check if everything is fine. It's a process. The same thing applies to when we develop products or services, writing emails, or even running project management. It all depends on a process. And why is prior processes so critical, especially for organizations or teams within an organization? Well, there's often, and this is something I've witnessed every now and then, that there's a misalignment between teams and departments. When you develop something, whether it's a product, service, or whether you're even working on a project, there's always some sort of a showstopper that comes in and puts the project on hold or makes it difficult to move on. The results that you want to generate, they usually then somehow result into some sort of conflict between people, teams, and departments. And at worst, it becomes an unnecessary political topic, which I'm sure nobody wants to have. And when all these things happen, what is the end result? Well, the end result is that a mediocre output will be produced. For example, a product or product future which is not the way like it should be. The risk of failure increases, and at the end, you have just wasted tons of time which could have been easily avoided. Now, when people think of improving processes in whatever way possible, then usually the assumption is that it is perceived as a daunting task, like you have to do so many things, and it's just seems like annoying. People may think that you have to buy expensive software, and in some cases you definitely have to when it comes to, let's just say, large scale processes in huge organizations, such as manufacturing or where something is being generated. Then you may need expensive software for it, but not in every single case, obviously. But still, there is an assumption that you need it. Then another issue is that people think, oh, we have to get an expensive consultants who can help us in improving processes. Then the next thing is, it seems like that you have to maybe like set up a whole entire project just in order to improve a process, which could then obviously take weeks and months, including kickoff and getting alignment and then conducting the as-is situation, so on and so forth. You know what I'm talking about. It seems like a whole entire project that people have to work on. And then there's obviously some sort of fear, and I've seen it, that usually at the end, when you are working on processes and figure out how you can further optimize them, or even just document them, that a complex handbook is the end product of it. And the solution that I'm going to show you is quite the opposite of everything that I've just presented. It's something that can be very easily prepared and executed, and it is fun too, since it will just take literally just a few hours. There's no software needed except for, let's just say, a whiteboard solution, and especially in the times that we're living in, you definitely would need some sort of like a virtual whiteboard solution, such as Miro or Mural. You don't need outside help, so no expensive consultants are needed. You can do this pretty much like within your team. If you want to have a facilitator who is a bit more objective, maybe you can ask some team member from another department who can help you with it. But generally, like, you can just get it done within your team. the project is pretty much replaced with a single workshop plus maybe a follow-up, but that's pretty much it. It's really just a single workshop that is going to take place. And at the end, you don't have a handbook, but you have a very simple process, picture, diagram, however you may call it, that you and your team can refer to whenever you want to figure out, okay, at which stage of the process are you at the moment. And without further ado, let me just quickly show you how you can execute it. And I'm also going to show you an example. So it's pretty much like, you could say, like 3 phases. So it's not just, oh, I just conduct a workshop, everything will be fine. No, there's also some sort of preparation going on at the beginning. So if you see, okay, like there is a process that either is not existing or has to be further improved, then obviously you have to pick one, which maybe seems a bit more painful at the moment, which, is just simply annoying, not just for you, but also for your team members, or even like with people from other departments. So you definitely just pick one process that you would like to optimize. Then at the next step would be to pick a team of maximum 7 participants, if possible, even less, but the max that you should be inviting to this meeting should be 7 people who you believe who can help in coming up with a better solution. Then obviously you need to prepare your whiteboard. So whether it's a physical or virtual one, and preparation means you should have something already ready with like sticky notes and voting dots whatsoever. And then before the workshop starts, you should request the participants of that workshop to do some research in advance. Usually this research should not take longer than 30 minutes. They should just have some just generate some or collect some ideas and thoughts and notes, how they perceive the process at the moment, but at the same time also figure out of, how could it be further improved in the future. This will just give each member enough time to be in a state where they can, productively contribute to the workshop. Now, when the workshop starts, so I'm talking about, the day that you have your workshop, obviously you welcome everyone. And then the first thing that you should do is clearly state the why we're here, why are we doing all of this. And you should definitely also set expectations, but at the same time also collect expectations from the team participants. Then pretty much what you do is like pretty much you start the workshop. And the first thing that you're going to do, and that's why what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell you what you have to do, and I'm going to show you beyond that an example of how we have done it. So pretty much like the first agenda point where action is required from the participants is that you request your team member to draw a process within 5, if not, depending on obviously how complex the process is, between 5 to 10 minutes in team collaboration. So you pretty much like pick like let's just say like one person who is responsible for writing down, where everyone else is just collaborating and just quickly think, okay, like what a particular process look like. So let me show you an example of what I have done once with a team, when with a PM team, and we pretty much focus on to understand first of all how the product development process looks like. So I give the team this request, or made the request to the team, please take 5 minutes and draw out like how the process looks like on a very high level. And so they were obviously like brainstorming and thinking, and at the end the result was that at the beginning there's obviously some sort of validation of the problem that they're working on. Then there is some sort of a kickoff meeting between the PM team as well as with maybe, let's just say, the development team and maybe some other people from other departments. After the kickoff, there's obviously a conception phase. After the conception, people do some obviously development, where a product artifact or like maybe even like a new product is being developed. There's after the development, or even obviously during the development, but especially after the development, there's a testing phase. Then they also mentioned that they also do some sort of internal validation with stakeholders to see if they can, maybe find some other holes in the development that could have has to be resolved before, and that's the next phase before a rollout takes place. So where the client actually sees it. There's obviously some sort of communication that needs to take place, not just within, but also to customers, so they know, okay, there's a new feature on the in the product, and then obviously there's at the end some sort of external validation. So that's the first step, and you can see, even though like this maybe this example is quite easy, but usually this can be done like within 5 to 10 minutes. Now, after that, then you request the team members or the participants to outline challenges during each process step individually. What does it mean? So pretty much you give each participant 10 minutes where they have like a staple of sticky notes, a Sharpie, or some sort of marker, and they have to write down individually, that means alone without talking to each other, what kind of challenges they see during each of these process steps. And once you wait, once the waiting time, once the 10 minutes are done, then at the next step is to ask each participant to present their challenges and stick it to the whiteboard within pretty much like 2 minutes. They just quickly just present it. There should not be like a huge long monologue about like why they have come up with this challenge or what was the background whatsoever. No, just quickly present the challenge, maybe give some understanding points, but that's it pretty much. So it should be maximum 2 minutes. If it's less than 2 minutes, even better. So how would it look like? So in the so when I talked with the team about product development process, they came up with the following. So when it comes to like a validated problem, they realized that often they run into this issue that the value for the customer is not clear enough while they are doing the validation, and at the same time, the goal of the topic or of the project is very unclear. So this could be pretty much like a result of, if not, when the value is not even clear, like what is the goal, obviously. When it comes to kickoff, certain team members mentioned that there was a lack of a kickoff meeting, which has never really taken place. It just somehow like went right into working on the project. In the conception phase, it was mentioned that there was a setup of wrong assumptions. So they started with something, but it turned out to be wrong. So it wasn't properly validated. So even though there was some sort of meeting, but they realized that the wrong participants were in the conception meeting. And at the end, there was also lack of data. So again, they just did the meeting somehow without collecting some data beforehand. During the development phase, they realized that that the solution has not been questioned enough. There was a lack of technical know-how, and there was a lack of sufficient resources. So they pretty much like underestimated the whole project from the beginning. For the testing phase, they said that there was no appropriate testing in place. So they just somehow like chaotically like tested it, but it didn't turn out the way like it should be. For the internal validation, there was a lack of transparency towards stakeholders. So the stakeholders, I guess, were not very amused about the way like the project has been handled. In the rollout, everything was fine. Then in the communication phase, it was mentioned that communication towards sales was too late. And during the external validation, the customers didn't like the development. So that really sucks. That's a big time sucker. But what you have already is you definitely have the process, how it looks like. what phases it goes to, and you already know like what's not working right at the moment. So once you have done this, so once the challenges are visible, the next thing that you do is you request your participants, based on the challenges that have been presented, come up with ideas, come up with solutions on how each of these process steps should be carried out, so that you don't run into these challenges again and again. You give them like 10 minutes time until they come up with some ideas. They should write down these ideas by themselves, individually, without talking to each other. And then again, similar to when they were presenting the challenges, they also present their ideas again, stick it to the whiteboard, and it should be lasting no longer than 2 minutes. So so allow me to show the example of what they have done for the product development process. So in order to overcome the challenges during the validation or problem validation, they came up with the solution to conduct surveys and interviews with selected customers, in order to make the value for the customer more clearer, as well as understand the as is and to be situation. In regards to the kickoff, the idea were that to conduct a kickoff meeting with the right participants and set up risk management. As for the conception, the ideas that were generated is that to collect data and generate insights beforehand, and then come with these insights to the meeting, validate some assumptions with a prototype. So before you even like go into development, just have a prototype ready before. And last but not least, clearly define a project plan and conduct what technical expertise is needed. So even though something that happens, or even though the challenges happen during this phase, but it's something that should be already approached and discussed during the conception. Then during the development phase, whenever a concern is being identified, it should be raised immediately, whether it's small or big. During the development, a test should be designed, which then later on can be carried out during the testing phase. And the status quo of the project should be challenged frequently, so that when something will be identified which is not working right, then at least you do it immediately and not later on during the testing phase or in some other phase later on. When it comes to testing, the test with the internal stakeholders should be carried out as soon as possible. And the test should also be carried out not just with internal stakeholders, but also with selected customers beforehand. Ideally, you can do these tests with exactly those people who have with whom you have conducted the surveys and the interviews. When it comes to the internal validation, it was ideated to get in touch with sales for communication towards the consumers as soon as possible, and not just after the rollout. For the communication phase, as soon as something is being rolled out, there should also be, not just to the sales team in this case, but to the entire company, there should be some sort of an announcement that a rollout has taken place. So, if there is some sort of collaboration needed for further steps after the rollout, then people can approach the PM team. And for the external validation, it was ideated to validate whether goal has been reached as soon as possible. So even though you have done everything right beforehand, it could still happen that maybe things are not working out the way it should be, and define next steps depending on the feedback from customers. So this is how they came up, and pretty much then you're done with the process improvement for the development process, for the product development process. Now, the next thing that you should be doing is to enforce to the team or to the participants that this is now the process that you're going to stick to. So obviously have do these or make sure that each participant or whoever has to use that process sticks to the high level steps from, in this case, from the problem validation towards the external validation during the product development process, but also make sure that to carry out everything which is in these green sticky notes. And then it could be possible that you say, okay, like to carry out these process steps, there needs to be some, let's just say, like some templates generated or any type of other to-do to make sure that each of the steps can be carried out in the best way possible. So it is good that if you find those loopholes, that you distribute those to-dos to the participants so that they can do some research. And why is this important? Well, there's obviously some sort of follow-up. Only because you have done the process, it's not 100% final. You can say like it's like 90% ready. In order to get to the 100% ready, it's always good to have some sort of a follow-up. So pretty much after you distribute your to-dos, you already arrange a follow-up meeting to finalize the process, ideally within like a week or 2 weeks. But I would say like best thing is do it like within a week, because then all the information, everything that you've gathered is still stuck in the head of the participants. What you should definitely also do is print out the new process. If you're obviously hopefully soon back in a physical environment, you should like print it out and put it everywhere so that it's perfectly visible. You should also make files, for example, of those templates, if they have been generated, so that people know how to do, for example, like carry out a survey, or how people should design the agenda for a conception meeting. And then at the end, and that's something which is then obviously ongoing, is you obviously observe how the process is being carried out and then figure out ways how you can optimize it from there. So maybe it would make sense to have another meeting, maybe like after a few weeks, if you say, oh, like there are some other things that we can further improve, or you can just do the improvements like on the go. Just completely up to you. And that's pretty much it. As you can see, it was very quick, very easy. If you obviously do the workshop, it's quite fun. It seems quite maybe like weird the way I'm presenting it, but I'm sure like when you actually carry out the workshop, it's actually a lot of fun, and that's pretty much it. And I really hope that you liked it. If you have any feedback or questions, please let me know within the comments. I will also see like if I can find some good links to some other sources. I will definitely put it into the video description. And yeah, hopefully see you again in my next video. Wish you all the best. Bye bye, and stay safe.